The year 1944 was the year Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would set foot in Simsbury, Connecticut for the first time, a pivotal period in his life that helped shape his perspective of the world around him. King was one of thousands of Southern African American students to make the trek north for summer work in the 1940s.
As we know, the tobacco fields they employed college students from the South, and they created a contract with Morehouse College, a prestigious HBCU that has graduated all sorts of phenomenal folks, including first Black mayor of Atlanta, in addition to Dr. King, Sam Jackson. Actually, Senator right now is Raphael Warnock, who's a senior pastor of King's Church. He's a Morehouse alum as well. I know all these people because I'm a Morehouse alum, and any Morehouse man will tell you in the first 5 minutes that they will find some kind of way to work in. They went to Morehouse, so I'm very, very proud of my alma mater. But King was part of a number of students at Morehouse College who spent their summers in Simsbury, and earning money for school. He was very young and came in during World War II. Some schools had early admission because so many people were fighting and so many young men were in war and drafted. So King was part of this group of very young teenagers who were able to enter college early. And so he got a chance to spend 2 summers in Simsbury.
Yeah, my aunt came up from, my family members, not my mother, because my mother was a little bit younger at that time, but her older sister and her older cousins came up here to work in summers. They worked in summers, he worked in Simsbury, but they're all right there together anyway. Well, not really, because Simsbury's down there. Anyway, the thing is that my aunt is now like 80 something. So her memory wasn't too sharp. But what she said was she remembered coming up here like on a Trailways bus from Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where my family's from, and going to work at these farms. And she said they stayed in these little houses and people treated them well, but that they worked a lot of hours. I don't think she remembered much more than that. So, and it's funny because like growing up, we never talked about that. I don't even know how I found out. At some point, somebody said, oh, well, that's how they all came up here, is because they went to work at those farms out in summers, right? But I don't ever recall it being like part of the family conversation. A lot of our family history was never discussed with us. Nobody ever talked about my aunt and my mom's 2 cousins, quote unquote, migrating to Connecticut for a better life. It just was, and so when I brought it up to my aunt that I had these college students that wanted to interview her, she said, wow, Lee, I haven't thought about that or talked about that in many, many, many years.
Recruiters hired students from one of the country's top Black colleges to harvest shade tobacco, one of the state's biggest cash crops.
Tobacco has always been grown in Connecticut, all the way back to colonial times. There was a law passed by the Connecticut legislature that said any tobacco products sold or used in Connecticut had to be grown in Connecticut. In the early 1900s, an experiment took place where they decided that they were going to try to grow the tobacco under netting. And they put up their poles and they connected the poles with wooden boards and then had the netting on top of those boards. And they discovered that it created a much thinner leaf. And a thinner leaf was ideal for the outer wrapper of a cigar. I'm told it doesn't do much for the taste, doesn't have any real effect on the taste of the cigar. That's all the ground up material, the ground up tobacco that they put in the center. Tobacco likes a sandy soil, and there is actually a defined Windsor soil.
On Sundays, King and the other students would go to the First Church of Christ to attend a service. In letters home, King talked about working hard on the Coleman Brothers farm. He also talked about eating at nice restaurants and going to church with white people. Morehouse students attended integrated dances at the Simsbury Grange.
King got a chance to go to Hartford and travel from Simsbury to Hartford, or just be in Simsbury and go to church and see white and black parishioners in the same church, which is something he did not see at home in Atlanta. And to also go downtown and be able to go inside of a restaurant or movie theater and not be denied entry in ways that he had been in downtown Atlanta. And it seems quite crude, coarse, and offensive and immoral and unethical. I tell my students that just imagine going to a Starbucks and just can't get in, because they serve one race. They actually explicitly base themselves on this principle that we do not believe in fairness, and we will just deny you access to this Burger King or the movie theater. And that world was a world that he lived in. So seeing that and the ease with which people were able to occupy the same space sort of demonstrated to him that these things as a child, with a very limited worldview, just seeing what was in front of him, he got a chance to see things very differently, and it disrupted so much of what his world had been up to that point.
In 1944, he wrote to his parents, to his father, and said, "You won't believe what's happening here." On our way here, we got to see some things that I had never anticipated. After we passed DC, there was no discrimination. We were able to go anywhere we want and sit anywhere we want. And white people were nice to us. So as a young black man coming from a segregated South, that's quite the awareness moment for him in his life.
Many of these men had trouble adjusting to the difference between life in Connecticut and life in Mississippi, let's say. I had two men. This was April vacation from school, and I was working at the farm, and I'd gone to Southbury to pick up a load of cedar poles. And we were going to use the poles to split the fields in half to make them shorter, make it easier for the picking crew. I came back with the poles. My brother-in-law gave me two helpers, both from Mississippi. They climbed on the back of the truck, and they dumped poles off every 33 feet where they were going to split the field. When we finished that, my instructions were, take your two helpers, go down, empty the truck, and load up bales of wire. Well, the bales of wire were considerably heavy. And I always did it with two people on a bale of wire. Well, these two men started just throwing the bales onto the truck, and every time I reached for a bale, one of them would take it and grab it and throw it on the truck. Got the wire loaded up, it starts to rain. I suggested to them, come on, get in the cab of the truck with me. They would not get into the cab. It took those men the better part of a month to adjust to the fact that they were no longer in Mississippi. And it was eye-opening for me. I had heard about treatment of blacks down south and that type of thing, but it was just almost like rumor. But to watch the way they tiptoed for the first 3 or 4 weeks was eye-opening, to say the least. They really didn't know how to behave in Connecticut. They thought Connecticut was just like Mississippi, and they had to follow these particular rules that they had grown up with.